Welcome to iPad Pros, the show all about using your iPad to be productive and get work done. I'm Tim Chen, host of the show. This episode of iPad Pros is sponsored by Agenda. Learn more at www.agenda.com.
Or if you highlight text in an email, so if you highlight the header, the heading, or the subject line rather, if you highlight that and then on the pop-up menu just choose share and send it to reminders, it automatically includes a link to the email. So
welcome back to another episode of iPad Pros, and safe travels to anyone traveling for the Thanksgiving holiday in the United States. I'm thrilled to be joined by Rob Copeland in this episode. Rob worked at Microsoft for almost 23 years as an engineering manager executive. He worked on the developer tools for Microsoft, including Visual Basic and Visual Studio. He then shifted to working on some very tablet-first things in Windows, like things for the Windows tablet PCs before the iPad was even a thing back in 2006. And he also worked on Windows 8, which was Microsoft's first unified OS that really was a tablet-first design. During all this time, Rob was heavy into using the iPad and has always had a mobile-first outlook on computing. It is from this very interesting background and perspective that we have this discussion about computing and how he uses the iPad as his primary computer. If you want to support this podcast, the best thing to do is go out and download Agenda, who is sponsoring this episode of iPad Pros. I'll be sharing a bit later in this episode how Agenda integrates with the reminders, but for now, head over to agenda.com to learn more and get started with this awesome app that I've used for years at this point to produce the show. Another way to support the podcast and get early access to both iPad Pros and Vision Pros is by supporting the Patreon at patreon.com/iPadPros or by subscribing in Apple Podcasts. My great thanks to everyone that supports the show there. With that, here's my interview with Rob. Enjoy. Welcome to the podcast, Rob.
thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. I've been looking forward to doing this for a while now, and it's glad we could finally find time before the craziness of the holidays start to come upon us here.
Oh, I know. It's creeping up very fast.
So, this episode will be out as everyone's driving to their families cross country or whatever, as people do. I'm not sure if that still happens. People driving like 12-hour. I'm sure some people are doing that. So
some people.
Yeah, I'm not this year, thankfully. So, no. Thankfully, unthankfully, I'd love to be able to go see my family this year, but staying home this year.
Oh, sometimes it's nice to just stay home. I'm traveling to go see my son, but that'll be nice too. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, let's dive into, I guess first up, tell me a little bit about who you are and your current iPad setup. What's that like these days?
Okay. My name is Rob Copeland. I am a retired software executive and engineer. These days, I'm a writer, a blogger, a sometimes developer, and a traveler, I guess, which includes photography and that kind of thing. I use an iPad, a 2021 11-inch iPad Pro. That's the M1 model. Cellular, 512 gigs of storage, space gray. With an Apple Pencil and the Apple Magic keyboard case. And then for my desktop setup, where I also use the iPad, I have an Apple Studio display and the regular Apple Magic keyboard, Magic trackpad. And then I've got this magnetic stand. It's a Chargen Mag Float.
Oh, yeah. I've heard good things about those. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really cool. It works really well. It's at just the right height to sit next to the studio display. With external display support in Stage Manager, I've been using it in this way a lot more. Almost every day. So
at the desk, I love having an iPad. I've got the 12 South Hoverbar Duo. I'm not sure what it's called. Duo, I think.
Oh yeah, I saw that one.
So, but whatever stand you have, it's nice to just have it, eye level as you're working on the big display. And you can, for me, I use right now as we record, you're on the iPad in the full screen FaceTime window, but in other instances, I'll have some other app that's basically, I'll have my full screen app there and then all my other windows on my big external.
Yeah, I do something similar. Although for me right now, you're on my studio display.
Yeah, because you have to have a camera. I don't have a camera on my external. I've got the Sony InZone M9 PS5 gaming monitor.
I see.
PS5 is also hooked up to this monitor, as well as the iPad.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting for me because I used to use a Mac all the time, and I tried for a while to have multiple displays with a Mac, and I just found that distracting. And so I got rid of one of my displays and just went to the single display. But now when I'm using the iPad, it's totally different. I love having the iPad next to the display, and I use it fairly regularly. And I haven't really sat down to figure out why is it that in this with these devices it's better. I don't know.
Do you touch the iPad versus using the track padding over to the iPad when you're on the external?
I trackpad over to it. Yeah, I don't.
You do? Okay. So I wasn't sure. Yeah, some people like to touch the iPad as they use the external with the keyboard and mouse. But yeah.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I suppose if I had a longer cable, maybe I would pull it off the stand occasionally to do something with the pencil, but I don't have a long enough cable to do that. So I should think about that.
Yeah, I've got the 6-foot Thunderbolt, 3 or 4 cable. That was way too expensive, but I'm glad I have.
Yeah, that one is very expensive, but that's probably what I would do if I were going to do that.
Yeah. And then, I have everything running through a Thunderbolt dock. So if I did get a different iPad or computer, I could just hook up to this one cable and be off and running. And often I'll plug my my iPhone 15 Pro into this cable just to watch, I grab a snack and watch movies on the nice fancy monitor down here.
Oh, nice.
Just through the iPhone, it's kind of it's a weird thing with the USB-C. You just, let's plug this in and watch something on a nice monitor. It's very convenient.
I haven't even thought of trying that, but
it would
now
work.
that you've mentioned it,
the Apple Cinema or the Studio Display.
See, now when we're done here, that's going to be the first thing I do is I'm going to unplug my iPad and plug my phone in and just see how that works.
Yeah. So you mentioned you have an Apple Pencil. Does it get much use these days? I have one, but I don't use it that often.
It does for me. And when I first bought it, I didn't know whether it would or not because I don't draw. I'm not an artist. But there are two main things that I use it for that it works great for me. The first thing is I use it. I have two websites. I have just kind of a regular blog, and then I've got this. It's called Rob's Tech Talk, and I write articles, how-to articles for non-techies on how to use their Apple devices, and I do a lot of screenshots. And when I'm marking up screenshots to highlight something or to point to something, I just find it way more natural to pull the iPad off the Magic Keyboard, grab the pencil, and do those markups that way. And when I'm thinking about articles I want to write, I often want to mind map or outline them. And there again, I use this app called MindNode. And I've just found that for me, pulling my iPad into my hand and using the pencil to mind map, and it works really well. It just makes me feel like I'm getting my ideas down more easily than just typing in an outline. So those two things I do quite often.
So with MindNode, I have this app. It's been a while since I've used it. I actually, my iPod book I wrote a while ago when the iPod died was all sketched out through a massive MindNode thing that I look at it. It's just like an interweb of just craziness, lots of notes and stuff in there. But I'm trying to think. So the Apple Pencil within MindNode, are you able to like draw lines between things? And is it converting handwritten text to typed, or?
It's converting handwriting to text for the nodes. Mm-hmm. It doesn't really. I've sent them some feedback because I'd like to have it support some of the things you just mentioned. It'd be nice to be able to do some of the annotation and line drawing between nodes. But as far as I've seen, it doesn't really support that. It's more just I can select things, I can write the text, and that works really well.
Awesome. So, tell me a bit more about your background. Like, you're retired now, but what kind of jobs have you had in the past? You mentioned both engineering and programming.
Yes.
And then when in this, did the iPad enter your life into retirement, or was it you kind of discovered it while you were working?
Well, it entered my life while I was still working. I worked at Microsoft for almost 23 years as an engineering manager executive. Most of the time I was there.
Is that like managing teams to like make sure this project finishes on time, but you also have the background as a developer to kind of help out?
Yes. It was managing the development teams. Mm-hmm. So half of my time, my first half of my career there, I worked on developer tools. I worked on Visual Basic, Visual Studio, those sort of things. Second half of my career, I worked on Windows.
Okay.
And interestingly, the first part of that, I worked on the tablet PC and ultra mobile PCs. And this was in like 2006, before the iPhone even shipped.
Yeah, that was an interesting time. I remember people making like the mod book out of Macintoshes to try to, and then Microsoft, of course, was working on this stuff well in advance of all this stuff. Yeah.
Yes. It was really
Bill
a fascinating
Gates' kind of pet project. Bill Gates always, I think, had a fondness for this form factor.
For the tablets, yes, absolutely. And so I remember when the first iPhone came out, and I got one while I was at Microsoft still, of course. And of course, we were all like, wow, it was just so beyond the state of the art at the time that it was pretty cool. We did projects like ultra mobile PCs, where this was before the iPad and any of that, but trying to come up with basically mobile computers that you could carry around with you and were connected and always on. And of course, in those days, at least for us, the hardware wasn't there, the battery life wasn't there, the form factors weren't there, but it was fascinating to work on those sorts of things. And after the tablet PC, I worked on Windows 8, which of course was the first touch,
the Metro UI of everything.
Yes. And so
I had a Windows Phone 7 back in the day, some kind of Nokia. I had one just to kind of play with, and I had it activated for a little bit. I also had the, Palm Pre kind of, I was just playing around with all sorts of different devices, and the Windows Phone, it was delightful. I kind of wish that kind of survived.
Me too. I of course, being there, I had lots of different Windows phones, and there were some really, really cool ideas and well implemented ideas, I thought at the time. And that was one of the interesting struggles when we were working on the tablet and PC side of things, is these were completely different teams and different approaches at Microsoft. There was the Windows team, there was the phone team, and trying to get ideas and technology back and forth when you're in a very large company like that sometimes is challenging.
And I know Apple's approach is they're secretive until they're not, and then the whole company is kind of like working together on stuff.
Yes, that's what it seems like, and that's given them really good results. So while all of these things, while I was working on all of these things, that was in say 2006 to I started working on Windows 8 in 2009. Mm-hmm. iPad came out in 2010. I got the first iPad. Of course, I just had to. I've been kind of a believer in this mobile first way of doing computing forever. So, and I just have to say I was hooked right away. It was like, this is the device that when we were working on some of these things that we dreamed about, really. I mean, it was thin, it was light, it lasted all day on a battery. You could do all kinds of things. The touch screen was so much better than anything that had been out before.
Yeah. Zooming in and out on the Maps app in 2010 on the iPad was just like a delightful thing. It's like, whoa, this is
yes. It was amazing. So I was hooked from right away, and I've had iPads ever since then, and even early on trying to do as much as I could on it, because it just felt like the future to me back then. It just and obviously there were lots of things you couldn't do in those early days, but I was going to try.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So What what have been some of your favorite iPads over the years? I should ask. I remember having an iPad Mini that I just loved at the time, and what have been some of your favorites?
Yeah. So, well, obviously the first one, just because it sort of opened the door to all of this. And yeah, I had the first one, the second one, the third one, and then I got a mini. And just like you, I thought, oh, this is wonderful because it was so much lighter. And so I had a couple minis for a while and used that. That was the only iPad I had. And
Yeah,
I thought, this is it. This is
it's
all
like,
I
oh, it
need.
fits every screen size. Oh, they just made everything more dense, so it fits the same amount of space on there.
Yes, exactly. It seemed so great. And so, yeah, those were some of my favorites. And then when the first iPad Pro came out, the 9.7, or well, I guess the first Pro was probably the 12.9.
Yep.
That was too big for me. So
Yes.
when the 9.7 came out, I got that, and then I thought, okay, now we're really talking, because the extra screen space felt, even though it was basically the same, just bigger, it with a keyboard that actually could attach to it, and I could carry it around and treat it more like a laptop when I wanted to. That was one of my favorite, in that it felt more like a computer in various modes than the other ones felt.
It was more
like
modular because you could just yank off the
Yes.
keyboard. And yeah, the 10.5-inch iPad Pro is my favorite home buttoned iPad because the side bezels are so thin. They're thinner than the current iPad Pros, the side bezels. And it was just it had a Pro Motion. It was just a delightful form factor for the
Yes.
home button iPad. Yeah.
Yes, I had that one too, and yeah, I loved the extra screen real estate. And you're right, the slimmer bezels, it all just felt so nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I guess let's dive even further back.
Okay.
When did you get into computers? Like, what was your first computer? When did you know you wanted to get into programming and doing all this crazy stuff?
Well, when I first got into computers, I was in high school, and I think it was high school. We went on a field trip to a local college in my town, and they had mainframes there. I'd never seen a computer really, or used one, and we got to sit and mess around with this computer, and instantly I was just hooked. I wanted to know everything about it. I wanted to know how it worked. I wanted to know how you could do these things, and so I was kind of hooked. But we really didn't have much money when I was a kid, so we couldn't afford anything, and there really weren't computers back then.
Yeah, you're gonna buy a mainframe and put in your house.
Yeah. Yeah. So the first thing I did was, this was in the era of the Atari 2600 game console. There was a competitor to that called the Magnavox Odyssey 2. And it had this membrane keyboard on it. It looked like kind of a computer. And I thought, oh my God, I got to have that. So I had a part-time job. I saved, and I bought this thing. And it was a game console. So I, of course, had games. But they had this intro to computer cartridge that you could plug into this thing, and you could write little programs in assembler. And no way to save them, mind you. So I had to, but I'd sit there and type in these little programs. My family just shook their head like, what are you doing? But just to learn about how to put things on the screen, that kind of hooked me. And then a few years later, my first, I guess, real computer was a Commodore 64. And in those early days, that was kind of a cool computer, I thought. And I did some programming on it. I was in college, so I wrote papers on it. I was, most people, those were the days most people didn't have computers. So
right.
It was kind of a novelty.
Typewriters were commonplace for writing your papers?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I had a typewriter, and I was convincing myself, oh, now that I bought this, I have to get a printer, of course.
Naturally,
and
yeah.
Yes.
Imagine having a computer alongside typewriters. Like, oh, you make one mistake in the typewriter, you got to start the whole page over again.
Yeah, it was kind of revolutionary to be able to type everything out ahead of time and then print it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Well, I'm thinking in modernity, game consoles, you have Sony and Nintendo. Those are very locked down. And then you have the Steam Deck, which can boot in. You can install Windows and boot and all sorts of stuff. And that's kind of, I guess, similar to your original game console where you could write code on the Steam Deck probably and hack it to do all sorts of computery things versus other game consoles, which are more locked down.
Yeah. It definitely seems, it's kind of funny how all through the years, those are all computers, obviously. They just have a different focus, and how open they are to doing these various different types of things besides their main focus has kind of ebbed and flowed, I think, through the years. Certainly today's consoles like the PlayStation, Xbox are very locked down, and you as a developer, you as a home hobbyist are not going to sit there and write code on these things. Well, some people probably do, but most people don't.
PS3 was hackable back in the day. I think people did some crazy stuff on that one, but generally speaking, not as much.
Yes. But lots of old time computers that led. Then since those early days, I've had some form of computer ever since. Obviously, PCs for the longest time, and then. Back when I was at Microsoft was when I got my first Mac. I felt sort of like a traitor at the time.
It's kind of you go to work at Microsoft and you get a Mac,
Yes, yeah. But I loved it. Boy, I was hooked.
But in that era, or I guess in 2007 onwards, you could just install Windows on your Mac.
The first Mac I got was the very first Intel-based one.
Yep.
It was a MacBook Pro, and Boot Camp, I could put Windows on it, and
that was my first Mac as well, going into college at the time, 2006. The 17-inch MacBook Pro, love that thing.
Oh yeah,
the little tank. I love the old aluminum keyboard, like just the whole thing. I wish they would do a retro design where they brought back aluminum keyboards.
Oh, that would be really cool. That would be those were really cool. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So I guess forward looking, where do you see computers going from here? We've got AI, we've got Vision Pro as an idea. Tablets will continue to advance, and Apple Silicon is making the laptops even better. And
it's for all these years, it seems at these inflection points where people maybe think, wow, computing is at its pinnacle. It's done. It's the best that it could be. And then something happens and changes everything. And I think we're definitely in a place right now that's one of those inflection points, and for various reasons. Mm-hmm. But to answer your question, where do I think it'll go? I guess to me, the word ambient comes up a lot in my mind, meaning that it's that the computer, the computing, the platforms, the information is just with you when you need it, where you need it. And we see some of that. Of course, people carry their phones with them all the time and their watches are on. But I look at something like Vision Pro and I think, wow, this is showing, I think, a wonderful vision of where ambient computing will go. And what I mean by that is, of course, today it's this thing that covers your eyes.
That form factor is not it. That's the that's the future of desktop computing when you're sitting down and being focused. We need the Apple Watch version of Vision Pro.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think definitely glasses or something on your face so that you can have your screen wherever you want.
Yep.
And to me, it's going to be very interesting to see how all of this evolves and how you go from this fully immersive experience that the Vision Pro can give you to something that's maybe less immersive, but with you all the time. Or do they come up with some sort of method to actually make it be just as immersive, only it's a much lighter weight, easy to wear all day kind of thing? That'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, and I can see multiple form factors coexisting. Like you want the fully immersive goggles for your at-home cinema experience versus your on-the-go lighter weight form factor. Because It seems like once form factors are introduced, they don't take them away that often. We still have desktop Macs, even though you have laptops. And
yeah, that's actually a really good point. They don't go away that often. We have game consoles, we have handheld gaming, we have, yes, all of these things, and they kind of just work their way into your everyday life. And something new comes along, and it still fits.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah,
and,
you find. I have like so many more computer form factors than I would have imagined. My watch, all the game consoles and iPads.
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of think, at least as I'm thinking forward, it'll be something like that. You mentioned AI, and I think that that's going to play a big role as well. And we're in this very interesting place again where it's this inflection point. There's all this activity happening. There's all this news happening. There's certainly a lot of hype happening. There's a lot of potential. So it'll be very interesting to see how that becomes part of the ambient computing that the future will give us. I think there's so much potential and so many possibilities. And at the same time, there are so many concerns and so many issues and all of this stuff needs to come together and get figured out. And probably in much the same way that the whole industry is today, there will be some that take it in one direction that is okay, but maybe not great for privacy and security. And then there'll be others who go the other way and probably have to do a lot more work and put in a lot more effort to make it be as useful, but privacy first, security first, that sort of thing.
It'll be very, like 10 years from now, I wonder what this world will be like. Because it seems like every 10, like if you look back 10 years ago, major leaps, and then year to year, it's like nothing's happening.
Exactly. And
like it's 2023 and 2013, like iPad was brand new, and like things have Apple Watch, and like I can't imagine life without Apple Watch now. It's really changed how I interact with my day to day.
Yeah, me too. That's another perfect example. You just look at that size, and in today's world, all that this thing can do and last all day on a battery. I mean, it's got a GPS, it's got a cellular radio, it's got all these sensors, it knows your heart rate, it can remind you of things, it can track your workout. It's kind of mind blowing to think.
Yeah, and that's less than 10 years. I think that was 2015, and that product line just advanced so rapidly year to year. It was impressive to see.
Yes.
Like, we got GPS this year. We got cellular this year. We got
yes.
It's ECG.
I was recently on a trip, and I was overseas, so I was in a lot of places I'd never been, and I needed walking directions because I did a lot of walking, and I would put the destination in my phone, but I didn't want to look like a tourist standing there gawking at my phone the whole way. So I used my watch to glance occasionally, what's my next turn? And I couldn't believe how accurate it was on where my current location is. The screen was big enough to show me enough of the path that I knew, okay, I'm going to be turning left up here. And I mean, that just seems so amazing. Like you said, 10 years ago, if you would have thought, I wonder if something like that would happen, didn't really seem possible.
No. We had the e-ink pebbles that were pretty basic as far as functionality, and
Yes. Yeah, it's amazing.
So, focusing on the iPad a bit, as this show is about iPads.
Yes.
But I do like to cover the other stuff because it is interesting to me.
Definitely.
So, iPad first is kind of, your main computer is an iPad Pro 11-inch. And I haven't had that size in a while. The handheld nature of that size is appealing, but I always like to get the biggest size for whatever reason.
Yes. Yes. I had a tough time deciding.
You wanted something more tablet-like as far
I did.
As, yeah.
I did. And to be honest, when I got this one, I actually bought both, the 11 and the 12.9, because I knew I could return one.
Yeah, I've done that before. The second generation iPad, I had the 10.5 and the 12.9.
Oh,
And I used them side by side on the Logitech charging base stand at work. And I love that setup. I was multitasking with two iPads and same screen technology in both.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually knew I was going to return one within my 2-week window. I really wanted to put them side by side and do my regular work and tasks and see, okay, is the 12.9 going to give me so much more benefit that it's worth the trade-off for portability?
Yeah, is the screen that much better for what I use it for? And all
yes,
because this is different screen technology currently and all that. Yeah.
Yes. And I even went on a trip with the 12.9. So while I had it, so that was kind of nice because I got to see on an airplane how well does this work on. And I loved it. I really did. But in the end, I only wanted one iPad, and I do a lot of reading and other in-hand work with the thing, and the 12.9 just seemed a little too big for that. On the desk, in the Magic Keyboard, it was fantastic, but so I chose the 11.
Yeah, and it's good to hear that Apple seems to. The rumors are they'll continue on with 11 and bring OLED to it, so the screen will finally be same class as the bigger one. And rumor today, iPad Mini in 2026. Sign me up for the OLED model.
2026. I didn't see that.
That was the latest thing I saw today.
Oh, really?
So
oh, wow.
I would love it if the iPad Mini got a great screen.
Oh, yeah, I would. Yeah, I would too. See if I have to say that I have thought, maybe if I had the 12.9 and a Mini, then
right.
I can do both things. But right now I do have to say the 11 has been fantastic for me, and now with the external monitor support, when I need more space, it's perfect because I can plug it in, I get all of this, and I can take it away and hold it and
I'd love
read.
Bring the M1 chip to the iPad Mini. That would be like an amazing computer for just that reason. You could have the handheld and then go full external display mode with it.
Yeah, that would be great.
So,
that would be.
Are there tasks that you still can't accomplish on iPad quite yet?
That's a great question. I guess the word "can't" is a good
prefer
word.
Not to. Yeah.
Yes. So, until recently, I would say there were probably three things that I still did on my Mac: coding, because I still like to dabble in coding.
Yeah.
Taxes.
Okay.
For a very specific reason, because I help some family members with their taxes, and the iPad version of TurboTax is kind of a one user, one payment thing, whereas the desktop version you can do 5 tax returns with one purchase.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And so, I keep thinking every year maybe I'll just use I kind of want to use the iPad version to see how it works, but and then until recently, another thing, this is a very probably geeky thing, but I play Dungeons and Dragons online with my son and a couple of other guys. And I've been using the Mac for that because I like to use my studio display and have the video up of everybody, plus notes, plus everything that's going on. But now recently, at least for me, the Dungeons and Dragons thing is going to work out fine with the iPad because we get external camera support. So now I can use my external display for that. So that's going to work out great. For coding, for a while after I retired, I was actually working on some apps that I really wanted to develop and ship. And so I was using Apple's Xcode, and you have to have a Mac for that. Last couple of years, though, it's been more of kind of this hobby where I just want to stay abreast of what's going on in the tech world and mostly focused on Apple development. So the Swift Playgrounds app on the iPad has been great for that. So that one I'm going to push aside. If I ever get back into real, I really want to develop something, I'll probably still go back to Xcode. But so honestly, right now, there's really nothing
Yeah.
I mean, the taxes
The
thing,
once a year.
Yeah, once a year thing that I'll probably still do, and maybe I'll switch that. I don't know, but so it's pretty cool that it's come this far.
It is, yeah. That's awesome. And yeah, the coding stuff, that's it's just such an interesting thing because Xcode is just this behemoth of an app, and then they have this Swift Playgrounds, which I don't know, in 10 years, does, Xcode X or whatever become the new Swift Playgrounds, and they kind of like coalesce into this new thing. I don't know if they'd want it like, do they do a Final Cut 7, the 10 transition with Xcode? That would be a very disruptive thing for the development community if they do that poorly. So I'll just be curious how that evolves, I guess, over the years.
Yeah, I will too. If I were to guess, I would say they wouldn't take that approach, although I don't,
Right.
But instead, maybe they would leave Xcode and then come up with a new thing, maybe called Swift Code, or some new thing that was Xcode has, support for all these legacy technologies, legacy languages, all these things, and maybe a clean break and just saying it's all about Swift, it's all about Swift UI, but it's a full development environment.
Yeah,
that'd be a great way to go, I think.
Yeah. Do you think it was easier learning how to code back when it was just very new, everything was new, versus now? Seems like there's so much complexity.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it was definitely easier back then.
Yeah.
It's definitely easier back then.
Like I download the Swift Playgrounds and I dabble with it and go through the lessons, and then I get to like build your own app in it, and it's like, I'm totally lost. What do I do?
Yeah, there's just, well, like you just said, there's just so much complexity and so many things. I mean, if you're going to build a real app, there's so many considerations, so many things that you have to beyond just, I'm going to put some stuff on the screen. It's, is it accessible? Does it connect to the cloud? Is my data safe? I mean, all these things. There's a lot to learn. Those lessons, I've looked through those lessons in Playgrounds, and they're pretty good, but
yeah,
I agree with you. I don't think they do a very good job teaching you how to write an app. They're more like
the fundamentals of concepts. Yeah. It's like, these functions, this is how functions work.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, I got all that, but let's bridge it to the actual, there should be a lesson on, there should be some sample apps. Like, I don't know, Apple's calculator app. Let's learn how to build Apple's calculator app with Swift Playground. Stuff like that would be kind of neat.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think Apple's starting to do a little bit better here on their own. Like yesterday or the day before, they released a whole bunch of new tutorials called, I think it's called Programming in Swift. I haven't had a chance to really dig into it, but it looks like that might be a good start if people wanted to learn. There's a guy named Paul Hudson who has this website called Hacking with Swift, and he has some lessons. He's got this one called 100 Days of Swift UI that's free, and it's 100 days of lessons that start from if you're a complete beginner and have never programmed before, that's a really good one because it's got short little, you take a step. So there are some good resources out there, but even still, it's a very complex topic. And, you see these things online about these boot camps that are going to teach you to be an app developer in 30 days or something. And I think that's being very optimistic in what you'd be able to accomplish in 30 days.
Yes. Yeah. No. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the thing I've always been intrigued by. Cause, build something that I can run on my phone or iPad, and yeah.
Well, yeah, because it's a very creative, it's kind of this really cool thing. You can make something of your own. You don't even need any natural resources. You can just sit down and no glue, no wood or anything like that. You can just create something, and it's very alluring in that way. But it can also be a very frustrating.
Yes, I was a music composition major, and I loved writing music and all that, and then try to write apps. It's a wholly different skill set there.
Yes,
different
definitely.
Creative outlet. Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
This episode is sponsored by Agenda. Agenda, if you haven't tried it out, is a great note-taking app that really thoughtfully integrates your calendar and reminders into your notes. In this quick break, I want to share how Agenda integrates with the Reminders app, which, if you haven't used recently, has come a really long way. You'll hear in the second half of this episode how Rob is all in on the Reminders app, and for those who use Reminders, there is no better note-taking app than Agenda. So first off, in the right sliding panel of Agenda, you'll see a unified timeline of your calendar along with any reminders that have a due date. By clicking on that reminder, you'll be able to act on that reminder in a few different ways. First off, you can create a new note in whatever project you are in that links directly back to that reminder. If that reminder is already linked to a note, that option will be replaced by the ability to jump directly to that note in Agenda. The next option is to add to selected note. So if you're already working on a note, you can select that to tie that reminder to that note in progress. You can even tie multiple reminders to the same note. This is super helpful for larger projects that you may want to have multiple reminders of in the same note. The third option in that sliding panel is the ability to mark the reminder as complete. You can also hit the quick reschedule option to push the reminder back 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, or 2 hours. You can also push the reminder for next week or next month. These options are all super handy ways of pushing a reminder back quickly rather than manually going in and changing the time and date. If you do really want to change up a reminder, you can do a full edit of that reminder right inside Agenda. This lets you change the title, due date, and you can even change which reminders list it is saved to. Finally, you can open up that reminder in the Reminders app if you want to view that reminder in the context of the larger list or even edit the reminder beyond what the Agenda app allows for. The final aspect of integration I want to highlight is that you can simply highlight a line of text in an Agenda note and hit Command-Shift-R on your Magic Keyboard to create a new reminder based off that line of text, and that reminder will be linked to that note you are working on. You can also hit Command-Shift-R without any text highlighted to link the entire note to a new reminder. Alternatively, you can hit the plus button on the menu bar at the bottom of the screen and select the alarm icon to link the note you are working on to a new reminder. I've not seen many other apps integrate with reminders in this deep and thought-out way. You can tell the developers behind Agenda use reminders and create this app out of a desire for them to be able to utilize reminders in an even more powerful way. If you haven't tried Agenda out yet, I'd really encourage you to give it a try. Agenda is free to download and use with no obtrusive ads. To unlock the full power of Agenda, give Agenda Premium a shot. One thing that Agenda continues to do that I love is their approach to premium features and unlocks. If you ever decide to cancel your Agenda Premium subscription, you get to keep all of the premium features available to you when you were a subscriber. Or you can opt for their new lifetime unlock, which will unlock the full power of Agenda on all of your Apple devices with a single one-time purchase. To learn more, go to agenda.com. Download Agenda 18 today for free from the App Store. My thanks again to Agenda for sponsoring this episode of iPad Pros. Learn more at www.agenda.com. Writing is a big thing you do on your iPad, to my understanding. You have a couple different, two different sites, and the iPad's an awesome environment to write. It can be very distraction-free if you set up properly, just a full-screen app with just your text in front of you. So tell me a bit about your writing on the iPad, what that's like.
Oh, yeah, you're right. It's absolutely a great environment for writing because, yes, it can be distraction-free, especially now with something like focus modes where you can just go into a writing mode and turn off all the notifications, which is what I do. It's wonderful. So for me, there's basically three types of writing I do on my iPad. I journal every day. I've got, as you mentioned, I have two websites. I just have a regular blog that I don't have regular posting schedules, but I have especially recently got more into a pretty often posting on both of these things. So I write and post there. And then I have this other site called Tech Talk that I've been kind of the tech support guy for my family for years and years and years. And they told me one time, you should put together a website because you're so good at helping all of us. Maybe if you wrote this stuff down, we could go back to it and look. And I thought, okay, so this site is more of a how-to. I just come up with, like my most recent post there is about how to use Hide My Email. And here's how you set it up, and here's what it does for you, and here's why it's good for you, and it's just a step-by-step kind of walkthrough. So
that's a feature I wish existed when I first got email, because it's too far gone. I'm just on all these lists
yes.
and I can't get out of it.
Yes, I completely agree. It would have been like from day one with email. That would have been.
Yeah, my daughter is going to have a great experience being able to, from the get-go, have Hide My Email. Like,
yeah, definitely, definitely. And I have dabbled in writing some novels, but that's kind of an on again, off again thing. And right now it's sort of off again, but they're sitting there waiting for me to come back, I guess.
Is Scrivener an app you use for that, or Ulysses, or? I
used to use Scrivener a while ago on the Mac.
Yep.
And then they came out with an iOS version, and I used that for a little while. But yeah, I use Ulysses for the website blogging, and for the novel stuff.
Okay. And do you use the Ulysses as the uploading from the app, or do you just copy and paste from Ulysses and do it directly on WordPress or whatever platform you're working with?
Well, I upload directly from Ulysses, but I have kind of a different, depending on what I'm doing. If it's my blogging site, then that's usually pretty straightforward, and I can upload from Ulysses. It's kind of nice. Ulysses lets you set the categories and the tags and all of that, and that works really well. The Tech Talk one, on the other hand, where I am writing how-tos and I have a lot of screenshots involved usually, that's a little bit more involved. I will still upload from Ulysses, but Ulysses doesn't have enough control over the sizing of the images, so I'll upload and then I need to go to the WordPress site and go tweak each screenshot with a size and a resolution that I want.
Gotcha. The images do get uploaded from Ulysses, though. It does support that.
They do, yes.
Just the sizing is a bit of a...
It's the sizing, and honestly, most of the screenshots I post are iPhone screenshots. I often want them to be side by side, so WordPress lets you have columns. Ulysses doesn't support columns, so I have a keyboard shortcut on my iPad where I can just do angle bracket C, and it inserts the HTML code in Ulysses to make the columns, so I can paste my images in there. So most of it's automated that way, but yeah.
And both these sites are WordPress sites?
Yes, both of them are WordPress sites.
Do you struggle at all with WordPress and Safari on iPad? Sometimes that website, I just want to throw it out the window.
Yes. Yeah. And yes, I agree with, yes, I struggle with it sometimes. And yes, I kind of sometimes want to throw it out the window. It's like, sometimes it just seems to lose itself, and you know, I've made an edit or something, and then it's very frustrating.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
And the app is worse. So, I mean,
the app is worse. Every time there's an update for the app, I think, okay, this might be it. And then I'll load up the app, and, you know, the app is fine for checking stats, checking comments. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's not great for writing, and yeah.
If I was a millionaire, I would commission the people behind Rapid Weaver to make a iPad version. I'd pay them whatever they ask.
Oh, that would be great.
Because I miss Rapid Weaver. That was my favorite website publishing tool back on the Mac when I used that. And
yeah, me too. I used that. It was fantastic. Yeah. Yes.
And we're on all these. We have WordPress and all these other, Squarespace, and they're just, I don't know. It's not as good. It's better for certain reasons, I know, but yeah.
No, I love WordPress, but yeah, yes, there's room for improvement.
There is indeed.
Yes.
Yeah. And journaling is something you've gotten into as well. Has this been a habit you've had for many years now, or is it something you've recently gotten into?
I have tried to have it be a habit for many years. Yeah. And actually, I just wrote a blog post about this last week, or maybe the week before. So about how I journal now, and I was looking back through it. My very first journal entry was in 1998.
Okay.
And then the next one was in like 2006 or something.
Right, yeah.
I mean, it was just so it's kind of been this on again, off again thing. But late last year, I, for some reason, wanted to make it be a daily habit. I I find that when I write down what's going on in my life, and especially if I've got worries or concerns or just things that won't get out of my head, writing it down and kind of working through it really helps. So I wanted to make it be a habit. And I read this article that suggested journaling first thing in the morning. I'd always done it in the evening.
Yeah, because I've started to do it, and it's the thing I do before going to bed mostly. Yeah.
Yes, then that's what I used to do, except then I'd be tired, and I'd think, oh.
Yeah, some nights I can't do it because, my daughter's being needs extra attention, and it's too late. I just got to go to bed.
Yeah. Well, so when I did this, when I decided, I read that article, I thought there's no way that's going to work for me, but I thought I'll try it. And interestingly, it really has. Since January of this year, I have written in my journal every single day. And that's the first thing I do. I get up, I make a cup of coffee, and I write in the journal. I don't look at the news. I don't look at my email. And that's stuck. And so that's been really good.
It's interesting. Yeah. I might have to play around with that, waking up a little bit earlier and just starting the day, not trying to rush out the door immediately to work, and instead
yes.
take a moment and reflect.
Yeah, it's worked out pretty well. I still occasionally will write in the evenings too, if there's something that's on my mind, but then now I don't feel the pressure to have to do it in the evening, And
is Day One the app you're using for that?
No, I used Day One long ago. I've used lots of different things, but what I'm using right now is an app called Bear.
Okay. I've used it in the past.
Yeah. I've used Apple Notes for years and love it, and it's worked great. But there've been a couple things that have pushed me to a different app. One is that search. I use Apple Notes for pretty much everything, and I use search a lot. And I kept getting a lot of my journal entries in my search, which, depending on what I was searching for, may or may not have been a problem, but was noticing it a lot more, where I thought, I've got to scroll through all of these entries. Like if I searched for iPad.
Yeah, right.
I apparently write in my journal a lot about iPads. And I have a shortcut that I wrote that creates my first journal entry of the day, and it does some formatting and puts the date and the weather and where I am. And I like it to be formatted in a specific way. That was always kind of finicky to begin with, using notes. And then in iOS 17, for whatever reason, it just completely broke, and the formatting wasn't working. And I thought, all right, so I had Bear installed, and I'd used it before just to play around with it. And it's got great shortcut support. And so this has just been a couple months ago. I thought, well, I'll give it a try. And I like it quite a bit. It's got a nice, clean interface. And so that's what I've been using.
Nice. Yeah, on my Christmas list this year, I have the Hobonichi 5-year journal. This is a company out of Japan, and the concept is you have this pretty large, like A5 journal. Each page has 5 days. So, you use the first year, you use just the top portion. The next year, you get to see what you wrote the previous year. In your year 5, you get to see, every year, just reflect it. You can kind of reflect on what life was like a year ago, and 2 years ago, and 3 years ago.
Oh, that's cool.
So it seems like a cool concept. I love fountain pens, so it'll be a good excuse to use those daily. And in this one, the page next to it's completely blank. So if I have some extra things I want to go off, I can use that extra page next to it to put thoughts there. And then I'll be capturing that with my iPhone each day and put in the journal app to have it in a digital form as well. So, yeah.
That's a cool way to do it. Yeah. I will admit that I miss writing the old-fashioned way with a pen. And like you, I love pens, and I have a fountain pen that I haven't used in years. And now you're making me think, wow, I should get that thing out. And I can't even... anytime I try to write anymore, it's just horrible. Because I don't write, so I'm out of practice.
Yeah, in high school, so bit of a tangent. So in high school, I learned about fountain pens. It's like, what are these things? And it's like, oh, that's great. Had horrific handwriting. I was in like middle school and earlier. I was diagnosed with dysographia, where it's like a clinically bad handwriting, basically, and I learned, and then in high school I got fountain pens and like I picked up these Spencerian handwriting books in the 1800s and learned how to write. It's like, oh, I actually wasn't just I wasn't interested in writing with crappy ballpoints, and once I found a tool that was fun to use, I like took an interest and have beautiful handwriting now. So it's like,
oh wow, that's really cool. That is really cool. Huh.
Yeah.
I'll have to look into some of that because
Amazon sells them still. Just search for Spencerian handwriting. There's these like brownish books. There's like $25 for. There's the theory book. Then there's like 5 workbooks, and it's a lot of fun. It teaches you the principles of that handwriting style and gets you fully up to speed with writing in that way. And
I'm definitely going to look into that. And, I can see another rabbit hole coming in. I just pens and
I picked up. I was very thrilled by this eBay find. A 1920s pen in pristine condition. So a 100-year-old pen, and it looks brand new. It was like restored, and I'm very excited to start working with with this pen because it's just like the history behind something like that. That it's like it's just kind of wild, and the disposable pen culture we have now of the Bics you just throw out.
That's really cool. That's a great find.
Because normally these things go for double or more. The one I got, it's so it's a 1920 Schaefer ringtop fountain pen that's been completely restored. Is made in Iowa of all places. We used to make pens here in America. But
that's cool.
Yeah, it can be an expensive rabbit hole, but
yes.
But yeah, journaling is a great way to just mental health and just reflecting and and a good excuse to write, which it's kind of funny. Like we used to write all the time in our culture. Like that was a thing you did as far as every job, and now it's like computers have taken over that task. It's,
definitely, and you make a good point. It's writing, and this article that I read that talked about journaling in the morning also was talking about how journaling is writing. And if you want to be a writer or you want to do writing, it's another way to practice that art, practice the craft. And I hadn't thought about it that way until I read that. And then I go back and look through. Sometimes my journal entries are quite short and sometimes they're quite long, but reading through what I've written, I can see that. I can see that, wow, I actually did pay attention to this sentence and how I wanted to express this thought or this feeling. And so it's a great way to just practice. Yeah.
I have a regular notebook now to use until next year. But I find some days it's like I'm doing a movie review of a movie I watched that night, and that's my journal entry for the day. It's like stuff like that sometimes.
Yes. Yeah. But sometimes it's kind of fun. You go back a few years and read through that and think, oh, it kind of sparks the memory, and it's a good thing.
Yeah. So, do you have any thoughts on Apple's journal app? Is that something you'll move to? It sounds like maybe it sounds like, using Bear, you've tried Apple Notes. It seems like simple things may work, and Apple's journal app is pretty simple. So
I don't have it installed, but I've read several reviews and watched a couple videos about it. And I think it has potential. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that I like about it is that it prompts you with things that you've done throughout the day. And, whether it's photos you took, whether it's music you listened to, places you were, you get a prompt that's perhaps will spark something that you want to write about. So I like that idea. It does seem beyond that, it seems fairly bare bones, which would be fine for me because all I do is I write text. Occasionally I'll put a photo in, but usually it's just text. The fact that it's iPhone only right now.
Yeah. Once it's iPad. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It works for me because I'm just taking a picture of my handwritten journal. But I wouldn't want to journal just on no. Yeah.
No, that's difficult to do. I was on recently a trip to Europe and I was gone for a month. It was the first trip I've taken where I didn't take my iPad. Mm-hmm. I only had my phone, and I wanted to keep up journaling every day. And I did, which was really great, but I had to do it on my phone. And, Yeah, that's just not the best, not the best experience for longer form things. I mean, a few notes here and there, it's fine. But so it'll be interesting to see where they take it. They do have this API for developers, so you can write an app that pulls that same information that they pop up for you. And I was thinking, well, wow, if they made that available through shortcuts, now that would be kind of cool. You could write a shortcut to prompt you for these things, and then take the, whether it's a photo or a location that you choose, and then insert it into your note-taking app of choice. That would be really neat. I don't know whether that is in the works, obviously, or even if it's there today, I doubt it, but it'd be cool.
Yeah. So another awesome use of the iPad is reading. Steve Jobs demoed this on the couch, 2010, just, laying back, browsing New York Times and Apple or iBooks at the time. And what kind of stuff, what's the reading experience like? You're probably just grabbing the iPad as a tablet, and or there's your go-to apps you have for reading?
Yeah, absolutely. For the longest time for books, I was all in on Apple Books, and for years and years. But this year, I was doing a lot more reading outside on the patio. It was a lovely summer, and reading outside in bright sunlight on my iPad is just not great.
They don't have the iPhone 14 Pro outdoor max nit brightness thing. It would be great if that got there, because it is amazing. The current iPhones 14 and 15 Pros outside, they have a sustained max brightness that is just feels like I'm indoors still.
It's crazy. Yes, yeah. It is crazy. But anyway, I switched. Yep. I bought a Kindle.
Okay, that makes I can see that's where that's going. Yep.
Yeah, and the app on iPad and iPhone is pretty good for Kindle. So
no fancy page curling that the Apple Books had.
Yeah, I was really bummed when the page curl in Apple Books went away for a version or so.
Yeah, they brought it back. It's like there's enough outrage.
Yes. I was really annoyed. I thought, come on, guys, come on.
Get rid of the last bit of whimsy for the Steve Jobs era.
Yes. So yeah, for books, it's these days. I still use Apple Books because I still have a lot of books in the queue to read that I bought on there, but mostly Kindle. I read a lot of blogs, of course, and for that I use NetNewsWire, and have been using NetNewsWire since way long ago on just the Mac before any of the latest stuff.
Yeah, back when RSS feeds were advertised on websites versus now you have to kind of seek them out. And
Exactly. It's kind of, I don't know. I'd like to believe there's a resurgence of interest in RSS, and maybe there is with all the weird things that are going on in the social media space. Maybe more people are interested in writing for themselves on their own platforms, so that would be nice. I use Apple News for news, and for social media, I'm only on Mastodon anymore, and I use Ivory. Which is a great app for Mastodon.
Yeah. And for email, is Apple Mail your one-stop shop?
Yeah, Apple Mail is it. Works pretty well for me. I don't really have any issues with it.
I like the new Remind Me feature of emails. I do find myself using that quite a bit.
I do too, but it isn't. The thing I don't like is that I can't customize it the way that I always would want to. And so, but a cool thing about Apple Mail is that you can send an email to reminders. And so that's what I usually do is I'll send, for example, if I send somebody an email and ask them for something, I'll go into the sent, I'll take the email, put it in reminders. I get a reminder with a link to the email, and I can put a date on it, so now it'll pop up and say, "Hey, follow up on this." That's a pretty cool feature that I use quite a bit.
Do you use Siri to get it in there, or do you drag and drop it to get it in? I
can either drag and drop it, or if you highlight text in an email. So if you highlight the header, the heading, or the subject line rather. If you highlight that, and then on the pop-up menu, just choose share, and send it to reminders, it automatically includes a link to the email. So
whoa, I had no idea that was a thing. Thank you very
it's
much.
very cool.
That's really awesome.
Yeah, it's very cool. So yeah, that's one thing about Apple Note. I haven't tried. I used to use, when I was working, I would use Outlook. But
I'd imagine Microsoft wouldn't have it any other way.
Yes. So yeah, it works pretty well for me. I search, even though it's supposedly vastly improved, I still don't find it to be excellent.
Yeah, that's the one thing I get yelled at in our household, that I can't find an email. It's like, Apple search. What can I do?
Yes. Yeah.
It's not. It's no Gmail as far as the search. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Is Reminders your one and only Reminders app, or do you use a couple for different purposes?
No, Reminders is my one and only. And wow, that thing has really come a long way in the last few years.
It used to be just a simple list app almost. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And now it's just fantastic. I use it. I've kind of, over the years, I've been this sort of productivity system geek, you might say. I've been, from early days with day timers and Franklin Covey planners to the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and Getting Things Done from David Allen. And even more recently, Tiago Forte's Building a Second Brain and Paramethod. Like I love reading all of these things. So I kind of have this sort of amalgam of all those various systems in a very simplified form. And it all works really well with Reminders as the only thing. So it's great.
Yeah, no, it's a phenomenal app. Like the shared reminders are great if you have people willing to also use reminders. And then the grocery shopping auto sorting has been just really fantastic. I'm impressed by what it does with that.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
That's a really cool new thing. Yeah. It's it'll be interesting to see where they take it. They keep adding new features that surprise me. This, iOS 17. The sections and then the ability to have columns. I just
templates
thought, wow.
now.
Yeah. I'm really surprised. I don't know why I'm surprised. It just didn't seem like this huge focus for them for a long time. And now lately they've really done a lot more to it.
Yeah, for sure. Web browsing, is Safari the go-to app? I mean, I know some people use Chrome because they like syncing between Chrome on desktop, but
Yeah, no, Safari is it for me. I do have Chrome installed because on a rare occasion, I will have some issue on some website that won't behave properly. And Chrome sometimes it'll work properly there, but that's extremely rare.
Which is funny because it's all WebKit.
Yeah, I know. It's usually something weird like it won't let me log in or some odd thing like that.
Yeah. Have you started using tab groups or any of the newish Safari features we have now?
I have a little bit. I have a tab group for blogging, so I have my WordPress tabs and things over there. And if I remember to switch to the tab group when I decide to do something, that's great. A lot of times I'll just open a new tab and start doing something and then think, oh, okay, now my WordPress is in with everything else. But
yeah, my tab groups are all... it's chaos because I'm in different tab groups that they don't mean anything anymore.
Yeah. I do like the iCloud tabs. There's a lot of times where I'll start reading something on my phone and then I can go to the iPad and find the tab that's already open on my phone and just jump to it. So that's kind of nice.
Yeah. I want them to bring Safari to the watch in some way. We have there is one WebKit watch app that is phenomenal, especially on the ultra size. And it'd be nice if we just had a basic version of synced Safari tabs where you could just pull up. I don't know. I want that.
Actually, that would be pretty cool. That would be, especially if you're out and about and it was just that you were looking at that one thing before you left home and you just need to glance at it again. That would be so nice.
Yeah, I remember in the early days before we had the web browser app for Apple Watch, I would text myself an iMessage a link and then I would load it up in just the Messages app.
Oh, yeah. Hey,
because that works. Yeah.
Yes.
It was a bit cumbersome,
definitely.
but I would do that occasionally.
I will say I'm one of those people that like the compact tabs in Safari, and I know that was quite controversial when but I still like them. I've left them on, and it works for me.
Yeah. So as you do research for your blog posts, do you compile that in like Apple Notes or DevonThink, or what kind of apps do you use for researching and storing information?
Yeah, I just use Apple Notes for that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a kind of a folder structure and a tag system to keep track of those things. I have a shortcut that I use that it's kind of got a dual purpose. It's in the dock. And so if I'm doing something and I don't want to get out of what I'm doing, I can just tap the shortcut in my dock, and it says, what blog is this idea for? And I choose, and then I can type notes, and it just puts it in the right place. But it'll also accept links from Safari. So if I'm in Safari and here's something that I want to remember for a post, I can just tap my shortcut and it'll take the link and put it into a note in the right place again. And that works pretty well. I usually just have one note per blog post that I'm writing with just a bunch of links and a bunch of ideas and notes. I don't like to have a whole set of notes related to one thing. So
yeah, Apple Notes, you can do so much in that app. It is, it's wild.
It's crazy. It's another one.
Let's scan a document. Why not?
I know. It's just, that's another one where that and reminders, just the last few releases, especially, they're really turning those things into real full-fledged apps that are not, a lot of times on Apple default apps, they're nice apps, but they're pretty basic, and they're meant to get the basics done. And then you've got all these third parties to choose from. These two especially have really turned into full featured apps.
Yeah.
They're great.
Yeah. The Notes app started as this weird IMAP thing, and now it's
yes.
Great.
Yes. Yeah. It's kind of unfortunate that it still supports that, because I've had family members that have accidentally gotten their notes stuck into some email accounts, IMAP. It's just kind of a mess to try to walk through over the phone with somebody. Yes. Let's fix this.
Yeah. And then finance and expense tracking. Are you using a dedicated app meant for this, or, numbers, or?
For me, it's just a numbers spreadsheet. I download CSV files for various accounts every month, and then paste them into my spreadsheet. That works really well. I'd love to automate this more, because it's a lot of manual steps right now to download, and each account has a different format in their CSV, and so I have to deal with that, and I haven't spent any time trying to automate that yet, but it's pretty straightforward.
So once that data's in there, are you graphing it out, cross-linking these CSVs, or is it just having the data all in one place if you need to reference it later?
No, I've got several tabs. So I have I got a main tab that categorizes all of my expenses, and there's a graph, and here's what the budget is and how close we are to the budget. And then I also have another tab or sheet or whatever that has categories and the descriptions that come from the various downloads, and will match a description to a category. So it will a lot of times automatically categorize. So if I download a bunch of credit card transactions, say it's from Whole Foods, it'll see that Whole Foods is in the description and just automatically categorize it as groceries. So it does some fancy things, but it works. It's still pretty straightforward. It's nothing really crazy.
It'd be interesting if Apple, so with Apple Card, they do the automatic categorizations, but it would be kind of interesting if they had a more manual way of doing that, where let me have 5 virtual Apple Cards, and when I'm doing anything food related, let me just tap to pay with that one, and if I'm doing anything transportation related, gas or whatever, mechanics, let me tap this other one. And that'd be an interesting approach. I don't know if that'd be just too complicated to do for them.
That is a cool idea. because it is, the whole categorization thing is kind of all over the place,
It
depending
is.
on, I mean, every company has their own way. I mean, I often get things automatically categorized from a credit card company as like baby goods, and I don't have a baby, and it's you know, it's from a healthcare provider or
Yes.
something, and I just think, oh my gosh, this is so, yeah, if you could tell it, look, use this card, and this card is always for these types of transactions, that would be really nice, actually.
Yeah. The Apple Card really impressed me when I was in Italy. I was looking back at those transactions. It gives you the map. It gives you the exchange rate, what you paid in euros and what it ended up being in USD. And I was looking
really?
at other people in my family's transactions, and they don't give you any of that kind of information. But Apple's like, here's, you know, a very, very detailed, like, it's a great, if you're going internationally, a great card just to like have all the information about each transaction. And
Oh, I think
Yeah.
that would be awesome. I don't have an Apple Card, but I was also just in Italy. I think we were in Italy at the same time, as it turns out.
it's wild.
But coming home and going through the credit cards, some of the transactions are just impossible to even figure out what it was.
Yes.
And having that extra information would be so helpful. That would be cool.
Yeah, no, that's something they were doing pretty well with that partnership that Goldman doesn't want to be in anymore. So photo and video editing is next up on the list here. And yeah, this is something I got into big time when my daughter was born. You know, got to be the dad that documents everything. So
Of course.
got the fancy camera and learned all about photo editing. And what's are you photo editing iPhone photos, or do you have fancy cameras as well? Or
Right now, it's just iPhone photos. I had a fancy camera for years, loved it. You know, fancy lenses,
Yes.
tripods, all these things. But the last several years, all of that stuff is just set in a box. And
Yeah.
I found that the iPhone is good enough for what I need. So I just recently sold all of that stuff a couple months ago. And yeah, now it's all I have is the iPhone. So it has to handle it all.
yeah, and
that's
it's gotten
worked out
really
well.
good. The later iPhones. What's your current model you're on now?
I have a iPhone 15 Pro, the regular size.
The regular size. Yep.
Yes. And that was a tough choice between the
Yeah, that
Max
5x
and-
lens. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It is.
You have the Max?
Yes.
Yeah. I decided that I've always had the smaller one. It fits in my pocket well, and
Yeah.
so
I had the
thought,
mini,
well,
and then I went to the 14 Pro Max. That was my.
oh wow, that's a big change.
I like either really small or let's just go all the way. If I'm gonna have a mini, you know.
Yeah. But it's still, even with the 3X camera, I was on this trip. It was a long trip. I took a lot of pictures,
Yeah.
and there were very few cases where I thought, oh, I'd love to have a 5X lens over what I had. So
Yeah.
at least for me, it worked out great.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you doing any raw captures, or are you mainly doing the normal stuff?
You know, it's mainly the normal stuff. I have the Halide camera app. And when I had my fancy camera, I shot in RAW all the time and would spend a lot of time with edits and all of that afterwards. But maybe I've just gotten lazy. I just use regular settings most of the time. I kind of have this desire to get back into doing some RAW and playing around with some of that, but I haven't yet.
Yeah.
I just haven't.
Yeah, I mainly do on the 15 Pro. I've been doing more of the 24 megapixel. That seems like a nice happy medium. And I do occasionally I'll throw it in the raw mode because it is fun sometimes to do some very artistic things with, like, my cat has like a flower in her collar, and I'll make it black and white except for the flower and do stuff like that. Like,
that's cool.
Yeah, so it is fun every now and then. But those files are. I have some like 120 megabyte photos. Like, it's wild.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
So you can't do that all the time. No.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, what apps do you use if you do want to touch stuff up, photography wise?
Most of the time, I use Photomator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's my favorite
and I'll
app
do-
out there. Like, I've used them all. That's my favorite. Just the UI
Is it?
and
Yeah.
the feature set. It's great.
It is. It's wonderful. And I don't do a lot. I mean, I do some crops, exposure, highlights and shadows, sometimes color adjustments. just to try to get the right look, depending on what I'm doing with it. But I know I scroll through some of the settings sometimes in Photomator and think I need to spend more time like learning some of these, the curves and changing all of these things, but I don't delve into that very often.
Yeah, and their machine learning stuff's cool. Like the increased resolution can be cool. Sometimes it's not useful. Sometimes it's super useful. Just depends what you're doing.
Yes. I've just played with that the other day on something and was pretty impressed with the outcome. And the machine learning that just does the auto, I don't even remember what they call it, the magic.
It adjusts all the different sliders properly.
Yes.
That's a really good job. Sometimes I change it around a bit, but it gives me a good starting point for sure.
Yeah, me too. I've been impressed with it a lot. Yeah.
And video editing, Final Cut, I believe you're starting to dabble with.
I'm starting to. I don't do a lot of videos, but I kind of want to, so before this last trip that I took, I was watching some travel videos just to learn about some of the places I was going to go, and I was paying attention to the video and how they put it together, and I thought, wow, instead of just taking photos all the time, I should take some videos so I could weave together kind of an interesting. And so I did take video this time on this trip, and I haven't really gotten to it yet because I've only been back about a week or so. But I downloaded Final Cut Pro and I started the tutorials. There's some tutorials that they include, and haven't gotten very far yet. But I'd love to spend some time with it and see what I could put together. Yeah,
no, it's a cool app. I like you. I don't do a lot of video. I would love to find more excuses to do video because it's a fun thing to do video editing when you have stuff to cut.
Yeah. It seems like it. I've put together some family videos we'll get together with a bunch of extended family, and I'll take a lot of just still photos and some videos. And those years ago, I would just use iMovie and put the photos in and weave in some of the video and add some music, and that was always kind of fun. It's pretty limited what you can do, so it'd be kind of fun to learn more about real photo editing or real video editing.
Yeah, once the 12 mini came out, I started taking a lot more videos because that's when Dolby Vision videos came, and those just look so good on the phone, just with HDR, brightens everything up. It's like...
Yeah, they do. They're awesome. Yeah.
And then the iPod died a while ago, as we all know.
Yes.
I still have, a good 50 or 60 of them probably somewhere in the house. I love that device. But
oh yeah, me too. I had most of those too, but I don't have any left.
Yeah, I collected every generation of every model because it's funny. iPods, like at least when I was collecting them, they weren't expensive. Like an iPhone is a good $1,000. An iPod, $50. Yeah, or less depending on shuffle. Get those for $15, something like that.
Yeah, and still great sound.
Yes,
and
they're great single purpose devices, and I love a good single purpose device.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But the iPad, for me at least, has become a listening device for sure, as well as the iPhone. I use a USB-C DAC when I really want to get into the craziness and just sit down and just all I'm doing is listening. Are you doing anything like that? Or are you just enjoying just the standard out of the box experience?
Just the standard out of the box experience. I've got AirPods Pro 2, and I have some AirPods Max, both.
Nice, yeah.
And they both, to me, sound really good, and for my purposes are excellent for listening. I use Apple Music and just sit and listen, and those are awesome.
Yeah, they sound great. I recently discovered the Star Wars original trilogy soundtracks got remastered in Dolby Atmos. Oh. And with AirPods Max, that is a cool experience. I would recommend if you're if you're in the movie soundtracks, that's a really cool Dolby Atmos spatial audio experience.
I'm going to definitely have to try that. I've sort of had an interesting experience with Dolby Atmos music, and I don't know if it's just me. I recently got the new HomePods, the full size ones. I have them in a stereo pair, and by default, when I set them up, they had Dolby Atmos turned on, and I was listening to some music, and I thought, this just doesn't sound great. I couldn't figure out what it was. It didn't have a lot of volume. It didn't have a lot of depth. I just thought, this is really weird. I went in and turned Dolby Atmos off for those things, and now everything sounds fantastic. And so I started playing around with it. And at least for me, what I found was there are certain songs that sounded fantastic in Atmos, like they were mixed really, really well. And then there were a lot of others that just didn't. And so for me, I've got it turned off right now. I don't know if we're in this phase where we need to wait until more music is mastered and produced in the correct way to really take advantage of Atmos, or what it is. But
yeah, I think movie soundtracks are great because they're already mastered for 5.1 anyways. So
yes.
I think that's the best use of it currently. I think some jazz is well done, but yeah. And then another one, that Dark Side of the Moon, Pink Floyd, that was mastered a long time ago for SACD surround, and I think it translates pretty well into the current Apple Music mix as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I was one of the weirdos in high school who had a Super Audio CD player.
Oh, did you?
With a 5.1 mix in my bedroom that my siblings were not impressed with because I would crank that thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I have a handful of those CDs still, and they're in storage right now. But the amazing.
I remember when they came out, and I just I thought, wow, I need to get one. I never did, but I wanted to get.
Yes, and they have a lot of them are hybrid discs where they work as regular CDs if you don't have an SACD, which is very smart on Sony's end. But that was like the last straw, and then we're just all in the digital right now.
Yeah.
Anything else as far as what you do on iPad that we haven't really touched on yet? I think we've covered much of.
I think we have. I mean, it's really everything. So we've covered all the main things. Obviously, there's all the the little I have a HomeKit based home, and I use the iPad to mess with that, but yeah, those are we covered all the
excellent
topics. Yeah.
As far as the general discourse around iPad, how are you finding that these days? We had the golden era where the Macs were all terrible, and now that the Macs stole the iPad chips, everyone seems to think the iPad's no good anymore.
Oh, it's interesting to me. It's interesting because it seems there's this, at least lately, a yearly cycle where it's quiet and people are just happy with what they have. Yeah. And then for some reason, I don't know if it's always around WWDC, but then there's all of a sudden a spate of articles that come out that talk about how the iPad is dead, or the iPad can't do real work, and just all these things. And I sometimes am amused. I'm sometimes annoyed. I mean, to me, I don't quite, if I were being totally cynical, I would say it's a slow news cycle, and so we need clicks. And so let's make some outrageous, ridiculous headlines so people will click on it. The iPad's dead, or something like that. Yeah. But I think maybe it's just more that we're in this continuing evolution of computing, and it used to always be PC and Mac, and they did everything, and that's all there was. And now for the last many years, we've had this evolution happening with the iPad, and more people are finding that the iPad is just what they need for everything. It's plenty. And the more features that Apple has added and the more apps that have come out, that's become a reality for so many more people, which I think is great. And I'm so excited that Apple continues to invest heavily in the Mac and in the iPad, because they're both awesome. I love the Mac. I have for a long time, but it's just odd to me that some people get so worked up about needing to tell you how your computing device is not good enough, even though for you it's plenty good enough. And
it's funny. I think for the longest time they were afraid the Mac would be killed by the iPad, which was a fear at one time. But I think those days are long gone. This is like
I think so too.
Yeah.
And you're right. Actually, I hadn't even really thought about that. You're right. For a while there, Apple would say things like the iPad is the best expression of the future of computing, which sort of does make you think, maybe and those were the Intel days when Apple had such little control over what was going on in their chips, both GPU and CPU.
And they had some horrible hardware decisions otherwise with their keyboards and
Yes.
Other
yes,
things,
exactly.
Yes. They had the aspirational trash can, which I kind of want one at some point because they are very cute. And
yes.
It's like a G4 Cube. You just kind of want one in your house. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, lately they've sort of switched that up to the iPad as our most versatile device. Yeah. I like that phrasing. And I think it is, and I agree with that. And maybe we'll see less of all this consternation about I doubt it.
Once the Vision Pro comes out, that'll be a whole other thing.
Oh, that'll be a whole other thing. Yeah, you're right.
Remove the focus from the iPad. The Vision Pro you can't do real work on the Vision
Pro.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I look at it and I think, wow, choice is wonderful. Apple's giving us choices for the kind of device that works best for us, and they're investing in both. And there was some recent YouTube video, I won't mention which one, but that was, I think the title was "The iPad is Dead" or something like that. That is kind of implying that Apple isn't investing in it anymore because there weren't new iPads this year or something. And I just thought, yeah, but just look at all the things in the last even 2 years or 3 years, and you've got things. You've got all of this software, which really makes the experience that from Apple and others that have, changed the game. And you've got DaVinci Resolve, you've got Final Cut Pro, you've got Logic, you've got Playground, you've got all these super powerful apps now.
In Stage Manager, they cleaned it up where it's a lot of fun to use now.
Absolutely. You get external monitor, you get Stage Manager, you've got mouse and keyboard, really good mouse and keyboard support.
External webcams.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. It's just, did it have all of those things on day one? No. Was there a period where you couldn't do a lot of things? Yes. But boy, to try to imply that it is stagnant or even dead is just kind of crazy to me.
The iPad generally is on 18-month cycles for like the Mini and the Pro and the Air, and then the regular one normally is every 12 months. But it kind of feels like last year they did the iPhone 10 thing, and here's the cheap iPad of the future, and we'll release this.
Yes.
And then next year, maybe we'll rejigger things and have a fresh strategy with everything, hardware-wise. Yeah.
I hope they do. I hope they kind of clean up the message is a little bit muddy. They have too many. The fact that the old iPad
the price point thing is just like they're trying to get a price point, but they're struggling with that. I see. But
yes. Yeah.
It's confusing. Eat the margins for a little bit. That's fine.
Yes. Eat it.
Exactly. Eat it. Give us a good iPad at a cheap price point for a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. They can afford it.
They can. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. It's And the versatility is something that is really powerful. The iPad, like right now, it's acting as like a simplified Mac hooked up to this external display. It can be a laptop or a tablet, and it just morphs into all these form factors really fluidly.
Yeah, it does. It's kind of amazing to kind of weigh the versatility versus how much power a device has. Since Apple started adding the M chips to the iPad, the power has gone up substantially.
Yeah.
Not as much as a Mac, of course.
No.
But you kind of mix that with the versatility, and you've got a device that really can do, for a lot of people, everything, even beyond just the simple tasks that in the past you'd say, well, if you're doing web browsing and email and some notes, then the iPad's fine. But anything else, you really want a Mac. And now we're in a world where, no, actually, the line that differentiates professional high end just keeps shifting to the right. And I think that's great because you get a device, a versatile device that isn't as limiting as it used to be.
And if you're an artist, Apple Pencil, it's I mean, there's no brainer. You'd want an iPad, at least as far as your computer regimen.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, I guess what was your Mac? Were you a laptop guy or desktop?
I have had most recently. Right now, I have an M1 Pro.
Okay.
MacBook Pro.
Yep.
Pro with an M1, with an M1 Max actually, which sits on my desk and doesn't ever get used anymore. So it's maybe I shouldn't have bought that one. So I've had laptops for a while, but I also had the 27-inch iMac 5K. I've had a Mac Mini. But right now my Mac is a MacBook Pro.
Gotcha.
And,
yeah. I kind of wish the Mac Mini and the Mac Studio still had an optical drive slot at the top of that thing. Like, I know
that'd be wild.
I know why they don't do it, but it's such a perfect form factor for that.
It is. There's probably space for the drive in there.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be an interesting add-on option. For $500, you can add a CD drive. Knowing Apple's pricing, it's a different case and all that.
Yeah, that's exactly what it would be.
Okay. Yeah. Anything else you wanted to touch on before we wrap it up?
No, I've really enjoyed being on. As I said, this is my first podcast, so it was a lot of fun. I appreciate you having me, and we got to talk about a lot of really interesting things.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. This has been a fun chat, and I'm looking forward to sharing this with everybody as they're doing their drives across country for family.
For Thanksgiving? Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So where can people follow you online? You mentioned Mastodon earlier and 2 different websites.
Oh, yes. On Mastodon, I am Cope Rob, COPEROB, at mastodon.social. And my blog is at wordsfromrob.com. And my tech talk, for if anyone wants to point family members for that are not super techie, is robstechtalk.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Rob. Really do appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Appreciate it.
Well, that was my discussion with Rob. My thanks to Rob for his time recording this episode. My thanks to you for your time and attention tuning in. And finally, my thanks to Agenda for sponsoring this episode of iPad Pros. Learn more at www.agenda.com and download the app today for free from the App Store to get started. With that, I'll talk to everyone again real soon.